We got a great next 90 minutes plus hearing about the PGA of America and with our special guest. But before we get started, we have another special guest today that came up with Mr. Finsterwald, Life member Paul Ransom. Can you please stand up and say hello to everybody? What a privilege to have you here today. It's also my privilege to be introducing the PGA of America President Derek Sprague. A little bit about Derek before Derek gets up here. He was elected 2 years ago at the annual meeting in Indianapolis. Prior to that, he served as the Secretary and Vice President for 4 years. In 1998, he served on the Northeastern New York PGA section, and then he was their president in 2003, 2004. He also served as a National PGA Board of Director 2007 and 2010. He was elected to membership in 1993. He served 27 years as the GM and Director of Golf at Malone Golf Club in Malone, New York, and is currently the Managing Director at Liberty National. I've been fortunate. I served 2 years on the Board of Control with Derek, and I've served the last 2 years in the Board of Directors in that room. I can tell you that Derek, from day one to today, he has stayed the mission, serving the member and growing the game. So it is a great honor for me to introduce the PGA of America President, Derek Sprague.
I think I got a lab here. At 5'7", I didn't know if you could see me from this first platform, so maybe I'll stay here so I can stay close to the crowd and feel as part of the engagement funnel here for the Colorado section to feel engaged with your section. I don't know why it's taken me 42 years to come back to Colorado. What a beautiful state. I can remember my first trip here at 7 years old, where we took a cross-country trip from Malone, New York, all the way to California and back, and visited all the great wonders of our beautiful country. And one here you have in Colorado was Pikes Peak. And I can remember it was like a day like today, 75 or 80 at the bottom, and it was snowing at the top, and I got a bloody nose because of the elevation, and my mother was panicking and didn't know what was going on. But you know, it's great to be back here, and I think Leslie, you're pretty close to being accurate here. And as I've talked to some of our other national staff here and leaders, you have a lot to be proud of in this section. What you've accomplished here, to have 300 plus here, which is 3/5 of your active members and nearly half of all your members here. I go to a lot of sections around the country, and we don't see that type of engagement. And Eddie, the statistics that you throw out there about their engagement, whether it's a certified professional program or Drive, Chip and Putt or PGA Junior League, that's because you have wonderful leadership here with your elected leaders, plus you and your staff making those phone calls and getting out there and working. So congratulations and job well done, and so much to be proud of here. And I agree with Ed too that it's easy to have the media beat us up nationally about our sport, and golf courses closing and businesses closing, as Ed referenced. But one thing that I think all of us can be very proud of here is that we've had about a 1% to 2% uptick in rounds the last few years. And probably most importantly, and you see it right here in the Colorado section, is 500,000 more junior golfers are playing the game today than they did in 2010. Okay, so when you look at our programs like Drive, Chip and Putt, which is sort of an introductory program, and then PGA Junior League, okay, those programs are fundamental about getting people into the game and creating future inventory. So I like to share this story because there are no other organizations, no other professionals like the PGA professionals that can manufacture golfers. And that sounds crazy. We're not creating human beings, but we're creating golfers. What other organization does that? It's all of you, the PGA professionals, right? So when those people walk into your doors at your facilities or at the Golf Techs here, which is very dominant here in the Colorado section, you have the opportunity to create future inventory for our game, and it's not a one-time transaction. If you don't do a good job, it could be a one-time transaction. But it's like the grocery store owner. They don't look at that customer as a $50 customer or a $100 customer per week. They look at that customer as a $5,000 a year customer. And then you look over the next 20 years, they're going to spend $100,000 in that store. So when you look at the impact that you can have on manufacturing golfers or creating golfers from a very early age, and the wonderful work you've done here with the Golf in Schools program, okay, you are helping out your economy here in the Colorado section. And then nationally, you're helping the PGA of America, you're helping the other 40 sections in our country, because those golfers may not stay here in your section as they travel, and they'll end up spending part of that $70 billion of economic impact that we have nationwide with golf. So keep that in mind when you're engaging with those youngsters, whether it's the Golf in Schools program or Drive, Chip, and Putt or whatever. My mother always said, when her friends, my parents played a little golf back in the late 60s, and I grew up right on the first hole of Malone Golf Club, and then ended up working there, as Kyle said, for 27 years after college. And my mother always said that, the golf course is the safest playground in America. And when you think about it, okay, what better area to have your children or to have children spend time than a golf course? Okay, a lot of times they're interacting with adults. They're interacting with business professionals where they might be able to get some tips on life or business. We got all these university students here, and I'm sure you interact with a lot of adults on the golf course. And then the other beauty of our sport, not only is it a safe sport, and when you compare it to a lot of the other sports that are out there that we compete with, right, is that the generational divide is not there in our sport. And what I mean by that is that, and this is one thing that we're not into launching programs anymore at the PGA of America, but when I look at, you can call it families and fairways or fairways and families, okay? How many other sports do you have sometimes 3 or 4 generations of people playing together on the golf course at one time? Okay, we're all busy, right, with our iPhones and iPads and Samsungs and all that. But, when you have the opportunity to spend a couple hours for 9 holes, 4 hours with your grandparents or your parents or your children, and at Liberty National, where one of the things that surprised me with a very exclusive high-end club like that is that the average age membership at Liberty National is 40 years old. So they have a bunch of young kids that they're bringing into the game, and we have a very open and welcoming policy for kids. And when I've been interviewing our members the last couple weeks, I do like many focus groups, what I love doing to engage with the members. One of the best things they like about our club is that we allow the kids to come in the game. And I was telling Bruce and Jeff on the ride home from ride over to the hotel from the airport, is I'm out ranging the golf course the other day, make sure pace of play is good, and I see these 2 girls that play all the time with their dads, and they're doing cartwheels down the 6th fairway. And I said to our head pro who I was riding with, I said, how cool is that? The kids are out here with their dads playing, and they're helping us. Both of the girls participate in our PGA Junior League. Those parents are helping helping us create those lifelong golfers, and it's in seeing that. So our sport has a lot going for it with the safety of it, with the values, the great values that we have, and that you can play with your parents and grandparents forever. I looked at your employment numbers here, and we had a report with Bruce, and your employment numbers here are pretty impressive. And I would expect that with such a high-performing section in the membership. So what are we doing on the national scene for employment? So we made a few different moves. I know Bruce, I think, and Jeff have a meeting this week, or at least Jeff does as the Western Regional leader for employment. And they're going down Scott Kimmick, who was heading up PGA Reach, who most of you probably have heard of in this room. He's moved over to Senior Director of Employment. So we're going to have someone at headquarters focused on nothing but employment, where that individual, Scott, will wake up each and every day and how they can support the employment consultants, support the 41 sections on employment matters. But I can tell you, and I've been a big supporter of our employment services, and I know for some of you out there that may have been displaced, you call up and you want our employment consultants to provide a job for you. This is a voluntary association. What our employment services does so well, as Bruce outlined, is that we equip you so that you can be a high-performing PGA professional. So there is no silver bullet when it comes to employment. You need to make sure that you're well educated, and your section's doing that with your certified professional program to get the latest and greatest in education. We have Daz Marlette, who's our senior director on the education side, is going to work closely with Scott to say, hey, what are the trends coming down the pipe 5, 10, 15, 20 years? Okay, we all chuckle in this room, those of us that are old enough to remember that, what are we providing our university students books for with the three-wheel golf carts and a tiller bar? They don't even remember those, okay? Or the wooden clubs where we used to teach, how to re-whip clubs. Okay, these young, bright individuals here, they're going to be, as Eddie said in his report, we need them to be better than us so that they can so this sport can continue to evolve into the future and help us be better PGA professionals and help our game be more welcoming for those generations that many of us in this room are trying to adapt to, of how these people consume our sport. But in a new position that we're working on right now as well is a chief membership officer. And that individual will be a PGA member. And Kyle remembers this. I was in the boardroom and I stood up and we were talking about how well we're really doing on the business side and the championship side, the stuff that brings in the revenue to our association so that we can pass down more ADP funding to our 41 sections. But this chief membership officer will be dedicated, again, work very closely with the employment and education, but really integrate with our sections and with Scott Wellington, who used to be your ED here as well, for section support. And again, similar to those other individuals as mentioned, this chief membership officer will wake up every day thinking, how can they serve the member better? And this person, we have about 6 or 7 chiefs which sit at the executive level of the PGA of America. This PGA member will be sitting right there. So at this board meeting, I said to our board, I said, we got chief counsel, chief revenue officer, chief commercial officer. Where are the members in this executive suite of chiefs? And to Pete Bavacqua's credit, our chief executive officer, okay, who works closely with Daryl Crawl, our chief operating officer, he really took it to heart. And that happened at our June board meeting. In July, we had our retreat over as we do every year, at the Open Championship, and it's sort of our officer retreat over there to do a lot of strategic planning. And then he came back with a board shortly thereafter and said, I agree that we really need to have a chief membership officer. So I think those moves at national level will not only support Jeff and Bruce and their teams, it'll support Eddie and your staff here, and hopefully you'll feel that we're continuing to drive more dollars down to the sections, into the members. And again, I applaud you with the work that you've done here with the formation of your trustees and how you're trying to drive dollars down to that as well. So what are the opportunities for our young future PGA professionals like these students up here? Okay? This is important for all of you to understand, about 50% of these people will not be in this room in 10 years. They'll be retired, they'll be playing golf every day, as Eddie encouraged them to do, okay? So that creates opportunity for our young students here to fill your positions. So you have a responsibility, and I see it's alive and well here in this section, to mentor these students, to mentor your assistant professionals, your apprentices that currently work for you. But the fact of the matter is, about half will be in the PGA Life member status if they elect to in about 10 years or so. So again, that's optimistic for our profession, for our association, for the game of golf as we welcome in new PGA professionals. And part of that strategy is going to be, as we heard, there's 15,500 facilities in this country, is global. And many of you in this room may say, well, I'm not going to work overseas or whatever, but I can tell you in our 18 university programs around the country, this generation right here, it's nothing for them to go abroad. And they probably have already done some semesters abroad, and you probably have friends that have done that, and right? Just raise your hand so they can see in the back. How many have gone abroad or know people that have gone abroad to study? Yeah, so here's all your students. They're either going abroad or they know students that have gone abroad. So we're working at the board level of creating global opportunities, and we have a firm that is helping us do that, because I can tell you, when I was at the Olympics and people said, Derek, you know, what do you think of the Olympics? Golf back in the Olympics since 1904, 112-year hiatus on that. Is it going to do anything for the game in this country? And my answer is not initially, okay, but in 10 or 20 years, absolutely, okay? And I've seen that. I'll give you a couple examples. About 4 years ago, I was at the PGA Merchandise Show, and there was a gentleman there from the country of Kuwait. Is there anybody here from Kuwait? Okay, no hands. So how many golfers did they have in Kuwait 4 years ago? 600. How many do they want to have by 2016? 10,000. Well, how is one individual going to create 9,600 golfers in a 4-year span? They need people like PGA professionals to manufacture or to create golfers, to teach people how to play the game. So, tongue-in-cheek, I joked with this individual. Of course, oil about 4 years ago and gasoline was very, very expensive in this country. So I said, how about we make a trade for PGA professionals to go to Kuwait for barrels of oil for this country? And he said, it'll be cheaper than doing barrels of water, because water was more expensive in Kuwait 4 years ago than oil, believe it or not. So they play golf at night in Kuwait. It's 120 degrees most days. They had one golf course 4 years ago. He was hoping to have 6 golf courses in 4 years. So that's the impact that the Olympics will have. Okay, and then I'll give you another example. I'm walking down the fairway at the Olympics, and I just run into this individual. We're walking, following Matt Kuchar's group, and I didn't mention anything, just introduced myself, and he must have known me just by name or whatever. And he said, I said, where do you live? He said, I live in Singapore. And I said, Singapore, really? And he said, yeah, I've worked over there for about the past 10 or 15 years. He worked over there like 15 years ago, then went back to the United States for 3 or 4 years, and then went back there. And he said, you know, I wish I could be a PGA member that's not in the unaffiliated category. I wish I could have that connection with the PGA of America, with one of the 41 sections in this country. And I said, are you a PGA member? And he said, yeah. He said, I'm actually a university graduate from New Mexico. I said, really? So it sort of hit home. I'm putting all these pieces together, and as we've shared with the board, and that I think you'll see evolve hopefully in the next year or so, is that we need to really look at our global strategy. So what does that do for our association? What does that do for our members in this room right here? It creates opportunities, and I can see people saying, I don't want to go over there. But if we can, we already have a number, and Jeff, do you know the number offhand to put you on the spot? Roughly how many? There's a few hundred that are working overseas, right? So there are a few hundred working outside this country. So the way it'll work is that to these university students, for example, you'll go over there and you'll work either in Kuwait or one of those countries over there, and then you'll say, I need more help. I need more PGA professionals. So you'll call on your classmates and say, hey, we got a heck of an opportunity, come over here and start to create golfers. And then those golfers will travel, they'll either stay there, they'll travel to the United States, and then you'll either recruit more, and you may like it over there, like this person has stayed 15 years in Singapore working over there. I can tell you with the Olympic golf course, sitting there having lunch, you have all the world golf organizations in the hospitality there. They were coming up to Pete Bavacqua and myself saying, what is the PGA of America going to do to help this course here in Brazil flourish? Brazil is not a golf-centric country, okay? Their sport, as we know, is soccer, right? They were looking at the PGA of America, and there was PGAs from Australia, PGAs Great Britain and Ireland, other PGAs from around the world in that room. PGA of Canada was there. They were seeking out us, coming to our lunch table saying, can the PGA of America help grow the game around the world? Can they help? Can we get PGA of America professionals to run this facility here in Brazil to make sure that golf stays here in Brazil? So that's the demand globally. So we're behind the curve, and you've heard Pete talk about this if you've seen him on some of his talks, is that we don't want to wake up 10 or 20 years from now with our head in the sand and have these other PGAs dominate golf around the globe. Okay, we have to have good employment here in the United States. There's no doubt about that. But future opportunities for many of our PGA professionals, and a number of them, it's in the thousands, right? 4,500 or 5,000 have indicated within our association they'd love to work outside this country. So that's one of the big things that we're working on from an employment standpoint. As was referenced earlier, the PGA of America turns 100 this year. Okay, it's our centennial. We had a great kickoff to our centennial year, if you will, with the section spotlights. And I can tell you, as I've done in some media interviews, and maybe you saw some at the Ryder Cup, is that, is it fun handing out Wanamaker trophies or handing out the Walter Hagen Cup to our professional that wins the PGA Professional Championship, or the KPMG trophy, or the Alfred S. Bourne at the seniors, or the Ryder Cup this year to Davis Love. Not too many presidents have done that, unfortunately, in the last number of years here in this country, so that was nice. But probably one of the neatest things for me is visiting sections here, okay, to see the great work, especially like your section has done, because this is where I grew up. I grew up, a lot of times, our young people in the room think that, we have a desk job in an ivory tower somewhere. Well, I've worked in the trenches and still am working in the trenches. People said, are you playing with us this afternoon? I said, no, I'm going back to work to get back to Liberty, and as we still got a couple weeks left. And I do see a lot of smiling faces here, and I'm smiling too because our season's coming to an end in a couple weeks as well in the Northeast. So no snow yet. You guys had snow, so you're ahead of me a little bit. And this 80-degree temperature threw a little curveball at us too. It's 80s the next 3 days in the Northeast. But really the work that all of you are doing at the grassroots level, and what we've showcased with those section spotlights in the spring, and then the Thanks PGA Pro. When you think about it, when you look back the last 100 years, where it all began in New York City, and talking about global, okay, it wasn't 35 Americans that were in that room. Over half of them were from Scotland and Ireland and the UK that came over to say, hey, let's band together, let's serve one another, let's elevate the standards of the PGA professional, and let's sort of standardize golf and start to grow this game in this country. And that mission, 100 years later, is the same. We're serving the members and growing the game, and those are two big buckets. And all of you really have that responsibility and are doing an incredible job here in this section where you're serving one another. Eddie, you and your team are doing a fantastic job serving all of you and the resources and everything that you've had here. And then all of you here are doing an incredible job. When you hear those numbers of over 10,000 students in the schools that you're helping, and then the growth of PGA Junior League and Drive, Chip, and Putt, really you are setting a standard for all the other 41 sections. And that goes back to our mission 100 years ago. And if you think if those PGA professionals 100 years ago didn't mentor new apprentices, didn't mentor new people to play the game and take up the game, where would the game be today? So to our young people, and I keep referring to our young people, okay, what is our association going to look like for the next 100 years? If you don't keep doing the great work that you're doing, are we going to have a 500,000 person increase in our junior golfers in the next 5 years? I hope so, and hopefully it's more than that. And just to talk on the programs, when I ran in 2010, the talk was the 66 programs, and some of you remember in this room, and I was running against Bob Doyle from your section here, and Bob's doing a great job for us at the PGA of America as well. And finally, as someone mentioned here that spoke before me, finally the industry has gotten together and said, let's get together and let's cross-promote. So we're going to talk about the USGA LPGA Kids Golf. We're going to talk about the First Tee program. But as PGA professionals, we should be proud that out of those 5 programs that the industry is collectively promoting, 3 of them are PGA program, or the PGA of America is involved with them. Get Golf Ready is the adult one, and Drive, Chip, and Putt we're involved with, of course, the Masters and the USGA, and then our PGA Junior League. So even the industry, my point is, even the industry is looking to all of you because they understand that you're the tangible connection to the game, you're the creators of future golfers to the game. They're relying on you just like the people around the world are relying on the PGA of America. Something you ought to be very, very proud of. So let's move into a little event that we had last month, the Ryder Cup. And we're going to hear from our 1977 Ryder Cup captain here in a few moments. And the Ryder Cup is our biggest asset for the PGA of America. However, it only happens in this country once every 4 years. Are the fans passionate? Absolutely. That's what makes the Ryder Cup so exciting to watch. We had zero tolerance for the people that did cross the line and get out of hand, and we addressed that over the weekend. But the Ryder Cup and all of our championships, the Ryder Cup and the PGA Championship, and now the KPMG Women's PGA Championship and the KitchenAid Senior PGA Championship, those events give us the platform to highlight the work that all of you do in this room. And I think we've come a long ways where we were, say, 10 years ago or so. I started serving on the board in 2007. I got a marketing degree from James Madison University. I'm like, can't you promote the PGA professional better? So we're using those platforms, and I think you see big events like that. And when you have 500,000 households watching the Ryder Cup around the globe, that's where I think those people are coming to us at the Olympics saying, we want the PGA of America to lead this game globally, and because they have a great amount of respect for all of you to do. So I want to just touch briefly on the Ryder Cup Task Force. Of course, we look like heroes now because we won, and it would have been a long couple of years if we didn't win with the task force, and we would have been beat up probably pretty well about that. But one thing I want to share with all of you here that I think you should be very proud of, give you an inside peek of the first task force meeting that we had down at PGA headquarters in Palm Beach. So it's during officer planning week. We schedule it during officer planning week, which usually is the first or second week of December, and where the officers come in, we meet with Pete and Daryl and our chief executives, and we say, we sort of set the strategy for the next year and how we're going to execute that strategy. So we had meetings, and every minute was scheduled. So on Tuesday, we're talking about the Ryder Cup Task Force meeting that's going to take place on the Wednesday afternoon, and I said, boy, I don't know if we're ready for this, okay, because we don't know what angle the players are going to take. We've heard stories, and you heard years ago, some of the players were talking about, well, we want to be paid in the Ryder Cup, blah, 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 and so it could have taken, we want this person as captain or that person as captain, and so, it was a little scary to say we're going to allow these people to come in. And in that first meeting, you had Phil Mickelson flying across the country to be there. Raymond Floyd was there. He had a granddaughter born that morning and still came to the meeting. We had Davis Love was on the phone, Steve Stricker, Ricky Fowler was there in person, Tom Lehman was there, Jim Furyk drove down from Ponte Vedra. So I said to the team, I said, we're going to cancel all the meetings on Wednesday morning to prepare for this meeting, and we're going to do a flow chart. What if they say this? What if they say that? So the key takeaway that I want to leave with all of you that you should be very proud of is the respect that they have for you as PGA professionals. Davis Love's father, PGA professional. Jim Furyk's father, PGA professional. They understand the role and they rely on each and every one of you to create those golfers, to grow the fan base for them. There was no, and I had visions of like a hostile takeover of our most prized asset, the Ryder Cup. And it was just the opposite. So then our next meeting was in February on the West Coast in California. And I said, okay, we've opened the door to them in December. They're going to come in this time with guns a-blazing, and they're going to take it over this time in February. And it couldn't have been further from the truth. They came back, and they were so appreciative of the PGA of America simply asking their opinion of what we can do to build a winning program for the Ryder Cup. I don't know about all of you, but when you had a 2-8 record, it's not fun being on the losing side all the time, right? It's more fun winning. And all those professionals that were on that task force were invested in the process of building a winning program. And I think you've seen some of that come out in the media. But again, what's important for all of you to know is they respect the role that PGA professionals play on the grassroots. And you got to take that right to the bank, and your responsibility of growing golfers is seen by the best golfers in the world, like the Mickelsons and the Tiger Woods. And by the way, Tiger didn't make it in person, but he was on the phone for 4.5 hours both times and engaged every minute of the way. And I think you saw he was engaged for 2 years leading up to the Ryder Cup. When he's texting Davis Love during the President's Cup in South Korea that I think we ought to do this in the Ryder Cup, it may work, that guy is engaged. And he was just as engaged when he was vice captain this year. So a lot for you to be proud of. Before I turn it back over to our Mr. 58, Mr. Finsterwall, who won the PGA Championship in 1958, I want to thank Leslie and the leadership here for inviting me out. I don't know why it took me so long to come out to this beautiful state of Colorado and to visit all of you and to really see up close and personal the great work that you've done. I've heard of all the great stuff, but when I see the reports and read the reports here, you have a lot to be proud of here. To Kyle, you're a great Board of Control member. You govern in that room with a steady hand, always giving the member the benefit of the doubt. And then he's been a great representative for District 9. For all of you here, and as I think all national directors learn, is that, now I got to worry about what the other 40 sections want, not just my section. And Kyle has done that with just a real steady hand. And Kyle, thank you for your service at the national level. To Bruce, as one of our employment consultants, you and your team have done a great job helping all of them. And Jeff, I know you're going out this year. I think we owe Jeff a round of applause for 18 years serving our association, helping all of you with your employment. Jeff? So it's pretty evident in this section here that you're pretty engaged. And when I was in Malone, New York, and some of our folks here that are at the national level or employments have heard my stories before, where I used to have to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to catch a 6 a.m. flight. I would drive 1 hour, I'd get a ferry, I'd cross Lake Champlain, drive another hour, get a plane in Burlington, and I'd have 1 or 2 connections to just about to get to anywhere in the United States. So, thank goodness for satellite radio at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I would listen to, as I like to study leadership a little bit, I'd listen to the Wharton School of Business leadership program. It's Station 111, if you want to take that down. But they have some great great sessions on there from some great leaders. So I want to just leave you with this, as I think Eddie and some of the other leaders have said here, but not in this manner. But it struck me at probably 3 o'clock in the morning as I'm getting on the ferry, and the person, he was from Hewlett-Packard, and he said, you have the opportunity to either watch the movie or be in the movie. So all of you here sitting in the room, you can see all these wonderful programs that Eddie and his staff is putting together for you, and you can just watch and come here and get your MSR credit and clap and say, boy, that's great that our section is doing so wonderfully. But it's evident here that, you know, a large percentage of you are in the movie, and that's super. And then with the leadership, the new leaders coming in, Ty and Ben and Jim, okay, they've raised their hand to have a starring role in that movie. And all of you can have a starring role in your movie at your facility, or here at the section, or with your golf and schools program, at your junior camps, at your Get Golf Ready, or your adult clinics at your facilities. But just remember, you always have that choice to either watch the movie or to get in the movie. And I encourage all of you to get in the movie. So at this time, I'll just open it to questions if I missed something, and then we'll turn it over to Mr. Finsterwald. Come on, there's got to be something. Everybody wants to go eat and play golf. So, nothing. Well, I'll be around a little bit afterwards, and then, but let's hear from our past Ryder Cup captain, and we'll see who's going to do the introduction. Thanks, Eddie. Yeah, you bet.